The news spread like wildfire through the streets of America. Elvis Presley was back. After 2 years in the army, the king of rock and roll had returned from Germany, and the entire nation held its breath. What would he do next? Would he still be the rebellious, wild-eyed performer who had set the world on fire, or would the military have tamed him? It was a different world in 1960. The early days of rock and roll were over. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis were either in jail, off the charts, or in exile. The new stars were clean-cut, wholesome, and far less threatening. Dick Clark's American Bandstand was the place to be, and the show's top acts were boys with shiny smiles and perfect hair, singing about puppy love and school dances. Elvis had been the ultimate rebel, but now he was 25, and the public expected him to grow up. He was no longer the teen idol who shook his pelvis and made mothers cover their children's eyes. The army had given him a new sense of discipline and responsibility. Some said he was a changed man, but no one knew for sure what to expect. On March 20th, 1960, Elvis Presley arrived in Nashville for his first recording session since he left for the army. The studio was buzzing with anticipation. Steve Sholes and Chet Atkins were co-producing, and the band included some of the best musicians in the business. Scotty Moore on guitar, Hank Garland on lead guitar, Bob Moore on bass, DJ Fontana and Buddy Harman on drums, and Floyd Kramer on piano. It was a Nashville A-team, ready to back the king. The session started at 8 p.m. and didn't end until 5:30 a.m. the next morning. Elvis was back in his element, and the energy was electric. They recorded 6 songs that night, and each one was a hit waiting to happen. The first song was Make Me Know It, a new Otis Blackwell song that echoed the success of Don't Be Cruel. Elvis's voice was as powerful as ever, but there was a new maturity in his delivery. The lyrics were playful, but there was an underlying depth that hadn't been there before. Next they tackled Soldier Boy, a doo-wop song that Elvis had been thinking about for years. It was a beautiful, plaintive ballad about a soldier's love, and Elvis's performance was heartfelt and moving. The outtakes from the session show Elvis whistling the tune, a moment of pure, unguarded creativity. Then came Stuck on You, a song that felt like a sequel to All Shook Up. Some critics later called it half-hearted, but it was a perfect blend of Elvis's new and old styles. It was a doo-wop song with a rock and roll edge, and Elvis made it his own. Elvis also recorded It Feels So Right, a bluesy number that showed his versatility, and Fame and Fortune, a ballad that was more mature and introspective than his earlier work. The final song of the night was I Love You Because, a sweet and romantic ballad that proved Elvis could still melt hearts. The session was a success, and the songs were released to critical acclaim, but the real test was yet to come. How would Elvis fare on the stage, in front of live audiences? Would he still be the wild, rebellious star who had defined a generation, or had the army changed him forever? Elvis Presley was back, and the world was waiting to see what he would do next. The year 1960 marked a significant turning point for Elvis Presley. After 2 years in the army, he was back, and the music industry was eager to see what he had to offer. One of his greatest performances during this period was A Mess of Blues, a song written by Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann. Mort Schumann recalled that the phrase "a mess of blues" was pure Doc Pomus, who loved the word mess and the blues. The song was a return to Elvis's roots, and it was a driving bluesy track that showed he hadn't lost his touch. Despite their talent, Doc and Mort had to give up some of their royalties to Elvis, which Doc humorously called the Elvis tax. It was a small price to pay for the exposure, but it was still a reminder of the power Elvis wielded in the industry. Elvis's return to the spotlight was not just about music. It was also about his image. He and his entourage took an overnight train to the Fontainebleau Hotel in Memphis for rehearsals for Frank Sinatra's TV special, Welcome Home, Elvis. This special was a big deal because Sinatra, who had previously been critical of Elvis, now saw the commercial potential in collaborating with him. Both men knew it was a smart move, even if their personal feelings didn't align. The show itself was a bit awkward. Sinatra and Elvis swapped songs, with Sinatra singing Love Me Tender and Elvis performing Witchcraft. They both looked uncomfortable, and the show didn't sparkle. However, when it aired on May 12th, it grabbed 40% of the audience, making it Frank's highest-rated show. The backstage moment when Joey Bishop asked Elvis for an autograph and Colonel Parker demanded $1, was a telling sign of the times. On March 23rd, Elvis released his new single, Stuck on You, which quickly became a hit. It sold 1 million copies in just a few days, and topped the charts for 4 weeks. The B-side, Fame and Fortune, reached No. 17 on its own. RCA was thrilled with the success and immediately planned a new album, Elvis is Back. They booked a late-night session on April 3rd, where Elvis and his band recorded a mix of blues, rock, and ballads. The session was a powerhouse of music. Boots Randolph's saxophone added a distinctive touch to songs like Such a Night and Reconsider Baby. Elvis's performance of Fever was sensual and memorable, and his cover of Reconsider Baby showed his blues roots. The album also featured Dirty Dirty Feeling, a fierce rocker, and The Girl Next Door Went a Walkin', a novelty song that stood out for its humor. One of the most intriguing aspects of the session was the variety of styles Elvis tackled. He was at his best when given a mix of moods and genres. The outtakes from the session showed that he was in good spirits throughout, even when recording challenging songs like The Girl of My Best Friend, which was later covered by Ral Donner, a sound-alike who became a hit in his own right. The album Elvis is Back was a commercial success, but it couldn't dethrone the Kingston Trio's Sold Out from the top spot. The title Elvis is Back was fitting, as he was indeed making up for lost time. His personal life was also in flux. He had a complicated relationship with Anita Wood, who realized that marrying him was out of the question. Meanwhile, 15-year-old Priscilla sent him love letters, which he dismissed as just a phase. Elvis's first post-Army film, G.I. Blues, was a lighthearted take on his military service. Directed by Norman Torog, it portrayed Elvis as a carefree soldier named Tulsa McLean, who spends his time partying and chasing girls. The film was a mix of location shots and studio work, and it featured a disappointing score. Songs like Big Boots and Did Ya Ever were forgettable, but Wooden Heart, sung partly in German, became a hit in the UK. The film's production was cynical, with songs written to fit the plot rather than to showcase Elvis's talent. Despite this, Wooden Heart topped the charts, and Elvis's performance at a puppet show was delightful. The film also included a re-recording of Blue Suede Shoes and a new rock song, Shoppin' Around, which didn't catch on. Off-screen, the making of G.I. Blues was more interesting than the film itself. The script, score, and direction were done to order, and the location shots were fake. Ray Walker of the Jordanaires remembered the fake train ride and the rear projection that made it look like they were moving through Germany. The fall in standards in Elvis's films started with G.I. Blues. The songs were written by a team of contracted writers, and the production felt rushed and commercial. Despite the film's shortcomings, Wooden Heart became a hit, and it was a reminder of Elvis's musical talent. The film's success set the tone for his future movies, which often prioritized entertainment over artistic quality. Elvis Presley's career took some unexpected turns in 1960, especially in his music and films. One of the most overlooked songs from his movie, G.I. Blues, is Doin' the Best I Can. This ballad, written by the talented team of Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann, could have been a hit single. Mort Schumann said that he and Doc were inspired by Don Robertson, a great country songwriter. When Elvis recorded it, he sounded a lot like the lead singer of the Ink Spots, a popular group from the 1940s. The movie G.I. Blues was a big hit internationally. Critics were surprisingly positive about it. The New York Times noted that Elvis had lost his usual wiggle and swagger, and this was seen as a good thing. The Guardian said he was starting to sound a bit like a young Bing Crosby, which was high praise. However, not everyone was a fan. The Monthly Film Bulletin said that Juliette Prowse, Elvis's co-star, deserved a better role and a more mature leading man. Despite the film's success, Elvis was still very serious about his music. One of his favorite songs was O Sole Mio, an Italian classic. When his publishers couldn't get the rights to the English version, There's No Tomorrow, they asked several songwriting teams to create new lyrics. The best version was by Aaron Schroeder and Wally Gold, and it became It's Now or Never. Elvis worked hard to hit the high notes, inspired by the great opera singers Enrico Caruso and Mario Lanza. The song became a huge hit, reaching #1 in both the US and UK. Elvis's personal life also saw some changes. His father, Vernon, married Dee Stanley, and Elvis welcomed Dee and her children into his family. David Stanley, one of Dee's children, said that Elvis was kind to him and his siblings, even though it was a difficult time. Elvis and Dee had a good friendship, but their time together was short-lived, and they eventually moved out of Graceland. Elvis's new hobby was water skiing, and he even had a boat named Karate. This love for water skiing later inspired a scene in his movie, Clambake. In 1960, Elvis also recorded You Lonesome Tonight, a song from 1926 that had been revived by several artists. Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, asked him to record it, and Elvis did so late at night, even turning off the lights to feel more emotional. The song was a big hit, but also controversial, with some fans thinking Elvis was moving away from rock and roll. Elvis's live performances of the song, where he sometimes forgot the words and laughed, have been interpreted in different ways. Some think he was high, while others see it as a sign of his great sense of humor. Elvis's release of Flaming Star was part of his new Western movie. The film was directed by Don Siegel and starred Elvis as a half-breed caught between his Indian and white heritage. The movie had some good moments, but it was not well received by critics. It raised issues about race relations, but did not handle them well. Despite this, the title song and the EP were popular. One of Elvis's most surprising achievements in 1960 was his gospel album, His Hand in Mine. The album was recorded quickly over 2 days, and it showed Elvis's deep knowledge of gospel music. The songs were a mix of black and white gospel, and Elvis's vocals were powerful and moving. The album was a hit, reaching the US top 20 and eventually selling over 1 million copies. Elvis's love for gospel music continued, and he recorded Surrender, a song based on the Italian Come Back to Sorrento. Doc Pomus, one of the songwriters, said that Elvis gave them a specific assignment, wanting a song that matched the style of It's Now or Never. Surrender was released in 1961 and became another hit. 1960 was a year of change for Elvis, both in his music and personal life. He was moving from being a rock and roll icon to a more mature artist, and his gospel album showed a different side of his talent. Despite the challenges, Elvis continued to make music that touched people's hearts. Elvis had a group of close friends from back home, called the Memphis Mafia. These were not Italian gangsters but good all boys who enjoyed a good time, and were always ready to do what Elvis wanted. They were his support system, his partners in fun, and his protectors. If Elvis wanted to play football, go to the roller rink, or stay up all night watching movies, the Memphis Mafia was there. Elvis gave them TCB bracelets, which meant taking care of business. It was his way of showing that they were part of his team. He also gave TCB bracelets to his band and other performers he liked, like Tom Jones. The Memphis Mafia was like a modern version of King Arthur's court, and they were always around to make sure Elvis was happy and safe. Elvis felt out of place in Hollywood, so he preferred having his friends from Memphis around. They thought and ate like he did. They didn't care for fancy French restaurants. They liked fast food and simple meals. Elvis would drop peanuts into his Coca-Cola and eat candy bars, just like any other guy from Memphis. When Elvis was in Hollywood, he created his own little world in a house on Perugia, way in Bel Air. The house, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, was modern and had a bachelor pad vibe. It was a place where the Memphis Mafia could hang out and have fun. Elvis would often have casual sex with Hollywood hopefuls, and the Mafia made sure he had what he needed. The Memphis Mafia were like bodyguards who did everything for Elvis. They were paid about $250 a week in the 1960s, which increased to $425 by the time Elvis died. They got free accommodation and gifts like clothes and jewelry. The biggest perk was being with Elvis all the time. They were tough guys, not afraid of a fight, and some of them even carried guns. Even Elvis' grandmother, Minnie-Me, had a gun. One of the key members was Billy Smith, Elvis' cousin. Billy and his wife, Jo, lived in a trailer on the grounds at Graceland. Billy took care of Elvis' wardrobe, making sure his elaborate costumes were always ready. On the day Elvis died, Billy and Jo played racquetball with him. Gene Smith, another cousin, was Elvis' chauffeur. He had a funny accent that made the others laugh, but he was loyal to Elvis. Gene left in 1969, after a pay dispute with Vernon, Elvis' father. George Cline met Elvis in high school and was the first to recognize his singing talent. He helped Elvis get noticed by playing his son's singles on the radio. George had bit parts in some of Elvis' movies and was there when Elvis married Priscilla. Red West, a tall and muscular guy, was another high school friend. He was a bodyguard and drove Elvis to early gigs. Red was also a songwriter and wrote songs like Separate Ways and If Every Day Was Like Christmas for Elvis. He had bit parts in 15 of Elvis movies and continued acting after Elvis died. Sonny West, Red's cousin, was in charge of maintaining Elvis cars and motorcycles. He was tough and protective, keeping jealous boyfriends away. Sonny and his wife Judy lived on the grounds of Graceland. He was fired in 1976, which led to the book Elvis, What Happened. Lamar Fike was a friend since the early days of Sun Studios. He was an organizer and often operated Elvis stage lighting. Lamar left in 1962 to manage Brenda Lee, and then worked for other performers. Joe Esposito, an Italian-American, met Elvis in Germany. He was a tour manager, bodyguard, and bookkeeper. Joe and his wife Joan were close to Elvis and Priscilla. He had minor roles in some of Elvis' movies and played guitar on stage with him. After Elvis died, Joe became the road manager for the Bee Gees. Marty Lacker, a high school friend, joined Elvis in 1960 and became his secretary and bookkeeper. He and Joe Esposito were best men at Elvis' wedding. Marty was fired in 1967. Charlie Hodge met Elvis on a TV show and later joined him in the Army. He lived at Graceland and took care of Elvis' personal business. Charlie and Elvis often played and sang together. Charlie suggested James Burton for Elvis' stage band and played rhythm guitar with the TCB band. Larry Geller, a hairdresser from Beverly Hills, became part of the Memphis Mafia after giving Elvis a good haircut. He introduced Elvis to spiritual books and was called Guru because of his fascination with religion and the occult. Larry and Elvis talked about the mystical world, and Larry even suggested that Elvis should enter a monastery. Alan Fortes, a football player, was a bodyguard and assistant from 1958 to 1969. He managed Elvis Circle G Ranch and occasionally played tambourine on stage. He appeared in the 1968 TV special. Dick Grob, a trained fighter pilot and police officer, became the head of security in 1969. He believed Elvis was dying of bone cancer when he had his heart attack. In the 1970s, Dee Presley's sons worked for Elvis. Billy Stanley, who looked a bit sinister, claimed that Elvis had an affair with his wife. Rick Stanley was fired after insulting Linda Thompson and became a church minister. David Stanley, the youngest, was a bodyguard at Graceland when Elvis died and later became a minister. Sam Thompson, Linda Thompson's brother, was a former police officer hired as a bodyguard. He got along well with Colonel Parker and later became a judge. Dave Hebler, a karate champion, met Elvis in 1972 and ran a martial arts studio. Elvis gave him a Mercedes-Benz, but Vernon fired him in 1976. The Memphis Mafia was more than just a group of friends. They were Elvis' family away from home. They helped him navigate the challenges of fame and made sure he could be himself, even in the midst of all the chaos. Elvis Presley's life in the early 1960s was a whirlwind of music, movies, and personal connections. After the massive success of It's Now or Never, Elvis was hungry for more hits. This time he set his sights on the Italian ballad Torna a Sorrento, which had been around since 1911. Mort Schumann, his songwriting partner, wasn't thrilled about the idea, but Doc Pomus saw an opportunity to transform Sorrento into Surrender. Despite Mort's reservations, Surrender became another transatlantic no, one hit for Elvis. The B-side, Lonely Man, was a heartfelt ballad from Elvis's next film, Wild in the Country. This film was supposed to help Elvis transition into a serious actor, but his performance was criticized for lacking depth and emotion. The film's screenplay was written by Clifford Odets, a respected dramatist known for his plays during the Depression. However, the highbrow script didn't save the movie from being a bit of a letdown. Despite the film's shortcomings, it did produce some great music. I Slipped, I Stumbled, I Fell, and In My Way were both strong songs, and the title track, Wild in the Country, was a folky gem. The B-side, I Feel So Bad, was a powerful blues performance that became a hit in the U.S. The song's raw emotion and the backing of Boots Randolph's sax and Floyd Kramer's piano made it a standout. Elvis's next album, Something for Everybody, was a mix of pop and country aimed at a broader audience. The album included a variety of songs, from the romantic There's Always Me to the country hit I'm Comin' Home. However, the album's title hinted at a shift in Elvis's image. He was no longer the rebellious rock and roller, but was becoming a family-friendly entertainer. In March 1961, Elvis Presley Day was declared in Tennessee, and he was made an honorary colonel. This was a time when Elvis was writing his own rules at RCA, and he was known for his late-night recording sessions. Chet Atkins, who was no longer working with Elvis, recalled how Elvis would want to record from midnight to 7 in the morning, which was tough on Atkins's day job. Elvis's benefit concert for the USS Arizona Memorial in March 1961 was a significant moment. The concert raised $64,000, which helped fund the memorial. This engagement was unusual for Colonel Parker, who usually focused on promoting Elvis's films. The concert's success was a preview of Elvis's next film, Blue Hawaii. In June, Elvis recorded 5 more songs, including I'm Yours and That's Someone You Never Forget. The latter was a tribute to his late mother, Gladys. The other songs, Kiss Me Quick, Little Sister, and Marie's the Name, His Latest Flame, were written by Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann. These songs showed that Elvis still had the fire and passion that made him a star. Both sides of the single were hits, with Little Sister and Marie's the Name, His Latest Flame, topping the UK charts for 4 weeks. Elvis's personal life was also in the spotlight. His relationship with Priscilla and the song Put the Blame on Me raised questions about his private life. However, his music and performances continued to captivate audiences, proving that he was still the king of rock and roll. Snuff Garrett, a record producer, invited Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann to Los Angeles to write songs for an album Bobby Vee was making with the Crickets and other Liberty acts. However, by the time they arrived, Bobby Vee had finished the album. Undeterred, Doc and Mort wrote Little Sister and Marie's the Name, Her Latest Flame. Initially, they offered Marie to Del Shannon, but he chose his own song, Hats Off to Larry, instead, so they gave it to Elvis Presley. Mort's demo for Little Sister was a fast, energetic rocker, but Elvis slowed it down, which worked well. The song was produced by Phil Spector, and Laverne Baker recorded a female version called Hey Memphis. Dave Marsh, a Rolling Stone writer, noted that Little Sister, with its Scotty Moore lead guitar, sounded like a precursor to The Who. Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin performed Little Sister at the concert for Kampuchea, and Ry Cooder's 1979 version, with its unique rhythm and strong backing vocals, matched the original. The shave and a haircut, 2-bits rhythm, found in songs like Not Fade Away and Willie and the Hand Jive, is a classic Bo Diddley beat. Mort Schumann admitted to borrowing it, but defended it by saying everyone loves Bo Diddley. The middle 8 of Little Sister is different, and something Mort really liked. The single became one of Elvis's favorites, with both sides making the top 10 in America. Elvis's version was strong, but Ry Cooder's cover was a standout, grooving and funky. Elvis was having a great time in the studio, and he had a great rapport with the musicians. He was musical and could ad-lib spirituals, which showed his versatility. When Elvis called Doc about an unusual organ effect in the middle of His Latest Flame, Doc didn't realize he was talking to Elvis himself. Despite writing several hits for Elvis, Mort never received a Christmas card from him. Elvis's next film, Blue Hawaii, was both the end of his golden period and the start of his decline. The film aimed to recast him as a family entertainer, featuring a mix of strong and weak songs. Can't Help Falling in Love became a standout, while Rock-a-Hula Baby was a forgettable rock number. The film's success led to a series of beach party movies, which were often formulaic and cheap. Blue Hawaii had a $2 million budget and featured songs by Tepper and Bennett, including the potential standard Hawaiian Sunset. The film also included Beach Boy Blues, a blues song with a silly lyric. Elvis enjoyed the dance routine for Slisson Sand, and the choreography was by Charles O'Curran, whose wife, Patti Page, appeared in the wedding scene. Elvis and Patti sang together in the film. Almost Always True is a French song Alouette with new English lyrics. Elvis's performance, while not his best, showed his musical range. The song Steppin' Out of Line was cut from the film but appeared on the next album, Potluck. The song's content about spanking a 17-year-old for underage sex was questionable. Elvis's mother, played by Angela Lansbury, was over the top in the film. The choice of Joan Blackman as Elvis's love interest was criticized, with suggestions that Elvis could have been paired with more talented actresses like Brigitte Bardot. Juliette Prowse was originally considered for the role, but her demands and billing issues led to her replacement. The Blue Hawaii album topped the charts in the US and UK, and the film became Elvis's biggest success. The main attractions were the scenic beauty, Elvis's screen wedding, and his appearance in swimming trunks. Colonel Parker negotiated an additional $25,000 for Elvis to appear bare-chested, which was a smart business move. Can't Help Falling in Love reached No. 2 in the US and topped the UK charts, while Rocket Hula Baby made the US top 30. The song Moonlight Swim was a better choice for a single, but was used as the B-side. Andy Williams and the Stylistics later had hits with Can't Help Falling in Love, and Elvis often closed his concerts with the song. Elvis continued to release singles, including Good Luck Charm, which topped the charts in both the US and UK. The B-side, Anything, That's Part of You, was a beautiful ballad. Despite the success of Blue Hawaii, Elvis's next film, Follow That Dream, was a step back. The film's songs were lukewarm, and there was no single from it. Follow That Dream featured Elvis as a hillbilly, and the title song was the best, though not as exciting as his latest Flame. The film's comedy was often cringe-worthy, but Elvis showed his comic timing. The album still did well, topping the UK EP chart for 20 weeks. The next single, She's Not You, written by Jerry Leiber, Mike Stoller, and Doc Pomus, was a hit in the UK but only reached No. 5 in the US. The B-side, Just Tell Her Jim Said Hello, was an easy-paced ballad. Elvis's album Potluck included Suspicion, which became a hit for Terry Stafford. The album also featured Kiss Me Quick, Gonna Get Back Home Somehow, and Night Rider, showcasing Doc and Mort's songwriting skills. Elvis was balancing singles, albums, and films, but live appearances were becoming less frequent. Potluck was a solid album, making the US top 10 and topping the UK charts. Despite the changes in his career, Elvis continued to be a major force in music and film. Mort Schumann and Doc Pomus wrote Gonna Get Back Home Somehow, inspired by Hank Williams' Ramblin' Man. They wanted to capture the feeling of travel, especially the romance of trains. It's a song that makes you feel like you're on a journey. Otis Blackwell's Such an Easy Question is a charming tune, and Don Robertson's I'm Yours was made even better with a narration. These songs were placed next to Steppin' Out of Line, a song that was left out of the movie Blue Hawaii. There's also Fountain of Love, which might have been meant for the same film. The album has a real island vibe. Red West's That's Someone You Never Forget is a great country ballad, though it starts a bit spooky. Sid Tepper and Roy Bennett's Just for Old Time's Sake is another good ballad, but the best song and performance is Something Blue by Paul Evans and Al Bryan. It's a clever take on a wedding song. In the early 1960s, a boxer named Abdul Bari Awad fought under the name Kid Galahad. This is interesting because Kid Galahad was the title of a 1937 movie starring Bette Davis and Edward G. Robinson. Later, Elvis Presley starred in a remake of this movie, playing the role originally played by Wayne Morris. By 1962, Elvis movies were mostly for his female fans. Since women usually don't like boxing movies, Kid Galahad was different. Elvis didn't do much boxing training for the role, and his fights were simple. If the movie had focused more on the technical aspects of boxing, it could have been much better. Charles Bronson was his sparring partner, and Ed Asner, known for his TV roles, made his film debut as the district attorney. The cast included Gig Young and Joan Blackman, who was Elvis' girlfriend in the film. Elvis played a boxer who didn't want to fight but had a good heart. The songs in the movie needed to be tougher to fit the boxing theme, but some of them, like Home Is Where the Heart Is, felt out of place. A whistling tune was from a previous film, Follow That Dream. Ruth Batchelor, who wrote for Elvis, said that she was given movie scripts and told to write only what his fans expected. For example, Elvis could say baby, but not darling. Elvis made 3 movies in Hawaii, not just 2. Blue Hawaii, 1961, and Paradise Hawaiian Style, 1966 are well known, but Girls, 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 1962 was also set there. The movie was a hit, and the title song was by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, who wrote it for the Coasters. Elvis added a verse about Hawaii and the twist. Some of the movie was filmed in Hawaii, but parts were also shot at Paramount in Hollywood. Jimmy Savile planned to visit Hollywood to give Elvis his UK silver discs, but Larry Parnes convinced him to send Billy Fury instead. Billy visited the set while Elvis was filming Return to Sender. Elvis was a better dancer than usual, and he had seen Jackie Wilson perform in Vegas. Larry Parnes, who managed Billy Fury, wanted to bring Elvis to the UK. He made an offer, and Colonel Parker promised to deal with him first if Elvis ever toured Britain. Parnes thought Elvis was a brilliant recording artist, but not a great stage performer. He believed that Colonel Parker kept Elvis away from live shows to protect his image. However, this was disproved when Elvis returned to the stage in Las Vegas in 1969. Elvis liked watching movies, especially The Great Escape and The Birdman of Alcatraz. He also enjoyed older classics like Wuthering Heights and Mr. Skeffington. He was a fan of James Dean and Marlon Brando, but didn't like the Keystone Cops. Girls, Girls, Girls had fewer girls than the title suggested. Stella Stevens and Laurel Goodwin were the main female leads. Stella sang The Nearness of You, a romantic song that Elvis could have performed well. The movie's score included Return to Sender, a hit single, and Because of Love, which had potential. However, some songs like The Walls Have Ears and Song of the Shrimp were less successful. Elvis played a tuna fisherman, and he spoke Chinese to his sidekick, Benson Fong. The script wasn't strong, but the score was better than usual. Return to Sender was a big hit, and the musicians included Boots Randolph, Scotty Moore, and Barney Kessel. In 1962, Elvis spent a lot of time at Graceland, often riding his motorcycles or driving his cars. He rented fairgrounds for late-night parties and stayed up all night. On August 6th, Anita Wood announced she was breaking up with Elvis, though they still saw each other occasionally. In August, Elvis bought a customized Greyhound bus for trips between Memphis and Los Angeles. He used it to travel to Hollywood for interior scenes in It Happened at the World's Fair, and then to Seattle for location shoots. The movie was set at the World's Fair and showed its attractions. Elvis played a charter pilot who fell for a nurse, joined the space program, and helped his friend, Gary Lockwood. The score was predictable, with ballads, novelties, and lullabies. The best song was I'm Falling in Love Tonight, but even that sounded like a gospel song. In October 1962, Priscilla Beaulieu moved to Memphis to live with Elvis. She enrolled in a high school, and Elvis was responsible for her well-being. She lived with Elvis and his family, and he gave her a puppy named Honey for Christmas. Priscilla and Elvis celebrated Christmas together, and he gave her a diamond ring. In January 1963, filming began on Fun in Acapulco, though Elvis stayed in Hollywood. The movie's pitch was about a trapeze artist who becomes a lifeguard and is pursued by a female bullfighter. The movie had a lot of silly songs, like No Room to Roomba in a Sports Car. Despite its flaws, the movie was a hit, and Elvis continued to make films that his fans loved. After Elvis' passing in 1977, the music world has been on a treasure hunt, sifting through old recordings and archives to find new gems. Elvis label RCA has been leading the charge, digging up live performances from the 1970s. Many of these shows were recorded professionally, so there's still plenty to discover. But often, these releases are more of the same another version of Bridge Over Troubled Water, or Can't Help Falling in Love. What's truly special, though, are the home recordings that have trickled out over the years. One of the most notable is the 1999 CD, The Home Recordings. It features 22 tracks, totaling just 50 minutes, but they offer a unique glimpse into Elvis' private life. These recordings aren't always top-notch in quality, and Elvis never intended for anyone else to hear them. But they capture a side of him that's rarely seen. One of the earliest and most famous home-style recordings is the $1 Million Quartet session from December 1956. Elvis, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash jammed together at Sun Studio. The microphones were turned on without much thought to balance, so the sound can be hit or miss, but the energy is electric. It's a historic moment, and despite the technical issues, it's a treasure. Around Christmas 1956, Elvis met up with his friend Red West, who was on leave from the Army. They recorded themselves goofing around with "When the Saints Go Marching In." They took turns singing lines, laughing, and just having fun. It's a simple, unpolished moment that feels intimate and real. These home recordings show Elvis in a different light. They capture his laughter, his jokes, and his genuine love for music. They remind us that behind the famous face and the superstar persona, Elvis was just a guy who loved to sing and have a good time with his friends. It's a side of him that's often lost in the legend, but it's the part that makes him feel closer to us, more human and more real.